Hello, students. This is Professor McDermott with your video recap of Module 2. I have to do this a little faster than usual because we have a lot of important announcements for Module 3. So here we go. The topic was labor in the Gilded Age, labor unions, especially pro and con. And Group 1 had a document written by Samuel Gompers, the president of the American Federation of Labor, the AFL. This document was written in 1894, which means it came in the middle of the Depression of the 1890s when a lot of workers were suffering. And specifically, he wrote it during the great Pullman car strike, which was a very dramatic episode in the labor movement in the 19th century. So his document has really vivid language talking about the sufferings of workers and their families. And Sandra, I liked your post. Just read part of it here. Gompers argued that as an individual working man, there was little protection. One had no control or influence on amounts of wages, working hours, working conditions, or laying out basic terms of employment. But as a member of a labor union, a working man had protection from unfair work practices and has resources to help him know what fair wages and conditions are. Gompers states that all legislation up to that point that had ever been secured for the ventilation and safety of mines, factories, or workshops had been the result of organized labor. As an individual working man, it would be hard to ensure any type of legislation for safe working conditions, but as a group, the labor unions were able to establish legislation to help lay out guidelines for ventilation and safety conditions. So that's really the gist of Gompers' argument, that as individuals, laborers are isolated and helpless. It's only if they organize and work collectively that they're going to get those higher wages, shorter working hours, and better working conditions that they wanted. And I asked in their second question, what do you think of Gompers' arguments? And I think most people in the group agreed with much of what Gompers said, but some people pointed out that the very passionate and emotional tone of his argument could have gone over better if it had been supported by some evidence, some statistics, and some facts. And I'm glad to hear you say that as you get ready to embark on your writing assignments for this course, because that is what we want to look for. And also, some folks pointed out that the fact that Gompers' union, the AFL, basically only unionized white males really left a bad taste in their mouths as well. Moving on to Group 2, they had the opposite point of view from N.F. Thompson. Thompson was a railroad administrator or executive from Huntsville, Alabama, and he is testifying in front of a commission in 1900 as to why he thinks labor unions are the most dangerous force in American society. And here's the answer that your group came up with. Thompson strongly felt that labor unions destroy the right of individual contract between employees and employers, and they lose the control to pay wages according to each worker's skills and capability, which doesn't separate anyone in the hiring process. So again, it's that idea of free labor, that a laborer should be able to sell his labor no matter how cheaply, if that's the going market rate, without a labor union or the government stepping in to enforce some kind of higher wage. Back to their answer. Labor unions educate the laboring class against the working class, creating antagonism between the two classes. And again, it's that specter of class warfare, communism, socialism, anarchism, that many Americans feared might take root in the labor unions. And finally, labor unions weaken the ties of citizenship, and that its society has no respect for the community or its obligations outside of what is doctrined by the unions or organizations. So that was another one of Thompson's points, that labor union members only care about the party line of their union, and they lose their patriotism and their commitment to the broader American society. So, very good summary there. And when I asked you the general question, what did you think of Thompson's arguments in general? It was sort of like Group 1's reaction to Gompers, but in reverse. You said you thought Thompson had made some powerful points, but again, his emotional language got him a little carried away, especially when he advocated that anyone who prevented scabs from working should simply be killed as a very extreme solution. And so you thought he should have moderated his tone a little bit. But I think it's interesting when you look at these very passionate documents by Gompers and Thompson, you really see how much was at stake in these labor struggles of the 19th century. Nowadays we think, oh, labor dispute, ho-hum, it's not that big of a deal. But in the 19th century, it really was a big deal because at that time, laborers didn't have workers' comp. They didn't have pensions. They didn't have Social Security. They didn't have health insurance. They didn't have workplace safety regulations. There's so many things that we take for granted now just simply were not in place. And the struggle to get those in place was sharply contested on both sides. So, all right, moving on to Group 3, they had quite a different document by Andrew Carnegie, the multimillionaire tycoon and head of the Carnegie Steel Corporation monopoly. And I asked, why does Carnegie think that wealthy people can benefit American society? And here was your answer. We have agreed that the three reasons why wealthy people are good for American society are giving back to the community, setting up businesses or public establishments that benefit the society, and influencing fair prices in business to benefit every class of people. And I think especially those first two clauses are very significant, that Carnegie saw himself as only a steward or trustee of his vast wealth. And he really did spend nearly all of it on charity, or what we would call philanthropy. And especially, he didn't like to give cash handouts, but he built thousands of schools, libraries, and parks all across this country in an attempt to uplift working people so that they could rise as he had risen from poverty. So he really did put his money where his mouth was in terms of his practices, and really became the first great American philanthropist. So when you think of someone like a Bill Gates or a Mark Zuckerberg nowadays, who's giving, the vast majority of their wealth to charity, it was Andrew Carnegie who really blazed the trail for men like that. And I asked again, what did you think of Carnegie's arguments in general? Some folks in the group felt that rich people shouldn't be under any obligation to give back to the poor. After all, the money was theirs and they earned it. But I would say the majority of the group reached a consensus that both rich people and poor people are necessary for society to do the different jobs that need to be done. That society just wouldn't work if there were only rich people or only poor people. And that just as poor people help rich people to get rich by working for them, so rich people should give something back to help poor people in their charitable efforts. All right, well, good job. I think you're really getting the hang of these discussions, and I'm pleased with that. So let's keep that going into Module 3 with your 2 questions based on the documents on imperialism. The 6th day of the module is Sunday, February the 5th at 11:59 p.m., so please make your initial posts by then in order to have a chance at full credit, and then continue your discussions on the focus threads until February the 10th, the last day of the module. Chairs for Module 3 are Mercedes Allen for Group 1, Samantha Gaston for Group 3, and Tara McCloskey for Group 3. Also, on February the 10th, your article assignment is due. This is the first stage in your semester-long writing project. So please let me know if you have any questions at all about that. Also very important, your first exam will open at midnight on the morning of February 12th, which is a Sunday, and it'll stay open through 11:59 p.m. on February 16th. As I mentioned before, this exam does not need to be proctored at this point. So on Saturday night, the 11th, I will email everyone in D2L with the password that you'll need to access the exam. I'll also post the password in our news feed. So you'll go to the quizzes link at the top of your screen to get to the exam. You'll enter that password and you'll have 2 hours to complete it. The study guide for the exam is posted in Module 2. as is a short video called How to Write a Good Exam Essay, which I urge you to watch. It's very important because the essay needs to be not just a few sentences, not just a paragraph, but an essay, a real essay. And that video will help you know what I'm expecting from that. There will be 15 multiple choice questions, 3 fill in the blank, 3 short answer, and the essay. You'll have 2 hours total. You may use your notes from the course. You may use your study guide even during the exam. That's fine. I'd ask that you not use the internet on your honor, just not to use the internet, partly because I think it'll slow you down, because everything you need for the objective part of the exam is on the study guide. But also to remove that temptation, especially for the essay, to just cut and paste. And of course, I'll be looking very closely for that, and I would have to give anyone who did that a 0, and I really don't want to do that. So I'd ask you just to stay off the internet other than taking the exam. Use your notes. That's it for this time. Keep up the great work, and please let me know if you have any questions.